Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Me? I'm going to be honest, I'm a little concerned that I'm becoming rather obsessed with this whole CSCS grandfather rights issue. Ever since I put my head above the parapet on LinkedIn and then on Instagram, I've been inundated with messages from people that will be impacted by this shifting of the goalposts. And with each new message comes another reason why the shift is utterly farcical. We're going to be talking about this issue in the main body of the show, but two things I'll just throw out there for your consideration. First, if you currently qualify under grandfather rights, the chances are you've been in the industry for 20, 30, possibly even 40 years. If that's the case, the chances are that you're now in your 40s, 50s, 60s. I've seen virtually no coverage of this issue in the wider media. So is CSCS hoping that all 50 and 60-year-old digger drivers spend all their time on LinkedIn? Because if so, they're very much mistaken. So how are they planning to communicate this change to the people that need the information most?
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
And here is my second point. I've been driving my car, not that car, but I've been driving a car for about 35 years. My driving license is unblemished. I've driven hundreds of thousands of miles without incident. Could I pass the driving test if I were to sit it again? Probably not. Over the years, I've picked up bad habits and I've developed what I can only describe as my own style of driving. I no longer keep my hands at 10 to 2. I never look at I reverse looking at a display on screen rather than looking over my shoulder. And my overall driving style has become less formal and a bit more relaxed. Is that not the same for machine operators? They start out driving in a way that suits the training course examiner, but once they've got their ticket, they drive in a way that suits them. How will they now fare in the eyes of an assessor that has been taught to do everything by the book? We can have a chat about all of that in the after show party. You can also join the discussion, which is taking place right now in our WhatsApp group. I'll post a link to that in a second. But I would also strongly urge you to check out a new video from Ollie Guns that explains the complications and the likely cost of this whole grandfather rights debacle. I'll post a link to that in the chat in just a second. If you're not already a member and would like to join our WhatsApp group, let me just post a link to that right now. Doing it there, you should be seeing that. Now, without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show very much on the road. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I'm your host, Mark Anthony. It is Thursday, the 2nd of February, I think. I think it is. It is Thursday, the 2nd of February. As that remarkably persistent guy just said, welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony. In today's show, why the card scammers are rubbing their hands together in anticipation of the impending removal of grandfather rights. We're checking out a massive Komatsu rigid truck, and we're throwing the ConExpo spotlight onto an excavator from Linkbelt. Plus, mud, glorious mud. Can't stop a Bell ADT. And we'll get to all that in just a second. But first, let's see who among the rich and the shameless will be celebrating a birthday on this day of days. Happy birthday! And it's many happy returns to poet James Joyce, Ulysses, I think, and to former Charlie's Angel, Farrah Fawcett. Happy birthday to TV chef Ina Garten, actor Brent Spiner, Radio 2's Ken Bruce, and singer Eva Cassidy. To singer Shakira, and weirdly, to her former husband, Barcelona footballer Gerard Piqué. But far more importantly, today marks the birthday of a true national treasure, Del Boy actor Mr. David Jason. Many happy returns to them, one and all. Now, before we get started with the show proper, here's a quick reminder of our question of the day. Have you ever been offered a fake competence card, either for sale or been shown one in order to get on one of your sites? Be interested to hear your thoughts on that. And we'll get to the answers at the end of the show, but it's time to get the show underway. I hope that the people behind the CSCS card scheme are watching, as I'm about to give them a very brief history lesson that might just prepare them for what is about to happen. When China began buying up the world's steel stocks, the level of scrap and metal theft went up as criminal gangs sought to make money from this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for fast cash. When everyone was forced to stay at home during the pandemic and their cars were parked safely and securely on their drives, thieves switched their focus, and we saw a spike in the theft of plant and equipment. And then when the subsidy in red diesel was removed, there was an upsurge in diesel thefts as the criminals realised there was fast money to be made. So, bearing in mind that it's already very easy to get your hands on a fake competence card, what do you think is going to happen when grandfather rights are removed from the CSCS card scheme? Well, to give you an idea, I've dug through the archives and found an old BBC expose on the competence card scammers.
Good evening and welcome to the programme with me, Riz Latif. First tonight, hundreds of workers on the capital's construction site could be working fraudulently after buying their qualifications for cash. Major building firms demand that workers display a special identity card showing they've passed basic exams. But an investigation by BBC London and Newsnight has exposed how some exam centres are helping untrained workers cheat the system. There are fears the practice could put lives in danger. Guy Lynn has this exclusive report.
But who can tell me what yellow signs mean?
At this testing centre in Norwood, candidates undergo training before exams in construction safety. They must be passed to get what's known as a CSCS card. The card's required by major construction firms to verify workers' training and skills, and that they've passed safety exams for such dangerous work. But we've heard of wide-scale forgery. We're undercover, meeting a Romanian man, Florin, at his testing centre in Collingdale. We've heard he's helping a large number of migrant workers get work dishonestly. The tests overseen by the Construction Industry Training Board, or CITB, are supposed to be under strict exam conditions. Watch how for cash, Florin just does the exams for our researcher.
Destul de ușor.
Da, depinde acum.
Dacă știi.
Orice e ușor că știi, nu?
Dar cu asta n-are cum să mă prindă nimeni sau așa că
Ce să te prindă?
Construction is one of the capital's most dangerous jobs. But we hear of unqualified workers getting onto major building sites as a result of the kind of fraud we've uncovered. Making a mockery of the cards relied on by companies to supposedly prove workers know what they're doing.
We're going to actually kill people doing this because people will be given this card. We assume, based on that relevant certificate, that you're competent to do exactly what you're supposed to. We will let you carry out the works and you will kill somebody.
So how wide scale is this? Well, it's very hard to assess something which is taking place so much under the radar. But what we've heard is happening now is that some places may be doing this in a highly organised fashion. Meet award-winning businessman Garrett Estenson. He runs a firm called WebHSE, and he does the exams in a rather special way.
Both guarantee passes on both tests. Yeah.
Garrett thinks that our team, posing as migrant workers, need CSCS cards. And he's arranged for them to get 2 of the required qualifications.
One chap sat here.
It's supposed to be a tough exam testing their knowledge. This is the reality.
What you're going to do is you're going to follow me on screen, guys. I'm going to shout out the correct answer on here, and you just click. So we'll show you first. Question 14 is A.
14A.
Question 15 is B.
15B.
Okay, gents, just a quick one on this one. We're going to make a couple of mistakes, but what I don't want is those mistakes to be made where everyone makes a mistake on the same question. Dean, I'll say to this side, choose your own, and then we get to maybe question 20 on this side. You guys choose your own, so they're just random, whatever.
The CITB and British Safety Council, who issue certificates for the exams arranged by Garrett and Florine, both said they take fraud seriously, as did the administrators of the CSCS card scheme. All said they'd revoke fraudulent qualifications and cards, and have done before. We caught up with Florine to try and get some answers.
Guy Lingan from the BBC. Can I just ask you why you're selling qualifications for cash? Why you've been selling qualifications for cash?
Which cash?
You arrange CSCS cards for people. They come in and they basically do the qualifications. They pay you, and you basically do the exams for them. Any reaction?
They don't pay me.
Sorry?
Why you wait?
Are you aware of the fact that what you're doing is dangerous and irresponsible and fraudulent? Any reaction to that?
I don't know who you are, guys. Seriously, leave me
I say
alone.
with the BBC, we've been recording you,
Okay,
arranging
see you later.
qualifications for people for cash for those who don't actually do those qualifications.
And finally with Garrett.
How many people have you arranged to pass courses fraudulently? How many people, Mr. Estenson, have you arranged to work fraudulently on building sites in the UK? I mean, is it hundreds? Thousands? No answer at all there.
And we hear of other centres in operation, duping large companies and putting lives at risk. Guy Lynn, BBC London News.
And you can see how Guy and the team tracked down those responsible for this fraud in an extended report on Newsnight. That's later this evening on BBC Two at 10:30.
If I was a BBC producer, I'd be planning a follow-up to that expose right about now. And if I was a card scammer, I'd probably be rubbing my hands together. The decision to remove grandfather rights on CSCS cards is going to drive our most experienced people towards the industry exit or straight into the arms of these scammers. Now, we've had a few comments, and I'm going to get into this a bit more at the end of the show, but I'm going to throw this one up. Steve Williamson, morning, Steve. I don't know why people would buy fake cheap cards and always having that worry that someone will find out and put your job at risk. They will always get caught out. I honestly urge you to go and have a look at Ollie Gunn's video. There is a link to it in the chat. Go and have a look. I've called the video Grandfather Rights. He reckons that his cards are checked at best twice a year. Bearing in mind the availability of work, if you get discovered on one site, you could probably be back at work that afternoon. That's why people are doing it. Let's have a look. How many are actually out there with fake cards right now? And therein lies one of the issues, I think, is the fact that we actually don't know the answer to that. If I tell you, I've been, my question of the day is, have you ever been offered fake cards? Now, bearing in mind what I do for a living, I've been offered fake cards dozens of times, primarily through Instagram. And having discovered these people, I've watched them, and they tend to pop up under a certain name. They're there for 3, 4, maybe 5 days, and then they vanish. And then they pop up with a similar but not exactly the same name. So they are hard to spot. But on one occasion, I actually reported this to the powers that be at the CITB and everything else. I reckon it was 3 weeks before I got a response from the CITB, by which time the scammers that I was aware of and that I was reporting probably would have changed their name 3, possibly even 4 times. We are not responding quickly enough, and we don't actually know how many people there are out there. And as Ken Hatcher said, there you are. Excuse me 1 second. Yeah, there are thousands properly. Peter McKenna says, even offered a fake driving HGV licenses. They are out there, people. I was going to go back to Mick Norton. There we are. There's Mick. Morning, Mick. I know CITB achievement grant for management CSCS card has been raised from £500 to £1,500, or £600 to £1,500, which to me indicates a degree of panic is setting in at CSCS about their card fiasco. One of the things I found saddest, I think, about Ollie Gunn's very, very, very good video. I mean, I sit on the very periphery of the industry. Ollie is there at the coalface. He's doing the job. His video is absolutely superb. I really would recommend it. But one of the things that he says in that video is that this is impending. It's December 2024, and that's when everything changes. And he reckons it's too late to make a stand. I don't necessarily agree with him, but unless somebody gets off their rear end and actually starts to make some sort of stand, I think this is just going to be a fait accompli, and we'll all have to fall into line with it. Steve Williams says, when you type in the card number on CITB card checker, does it come up that you have the correct card or fake? The problem is, and when you think about the level of sites here, obviously we have HS2, Hinkley Point, all these major sites where they have on-site card readers and all modern technology. And then compare that to a 1 week demolition contract or a 1 week groundworks contract in the back of Beyond. Are they going to the trouble? Are they? And just as going even further than that, there are demolition contractors, and I'm sure this applies equally within the world of construction. There are demolition contractors who basically they employ a very skeleton staff. And then when they pick up a contract that requires additional people, do they go through an agency that has done the card checks? No, they go down to their local pub. They pull together half a dozen guys who fancy a bit of work and need the cash. They're paid off the books. There's no cards checked. There's no cards in place. That's the reality of the world. Steve Williamson, they won't be fake if that guy issuing them, if that guy is issuing them from the CITB. And therein lies the problem. If you've got people actually sitting the exam for you, those cards that they have been obtained fraudulently, but they are kosher cards, and therein lies the issue. We'll talk about this more after the show. It occurred to me yesterday that so far all of our pre-ConExpo coverage has featured the usual suspects: Caterpillar, John Deere, Volvo, Liebherr, Case, Bobcat. But there are plenty of other equipment brands that will be exhibiting in Las Vegas, including some that we rarely, if ever, see on this side of the pond. Case in point, Link-Belt. think a lot of people actually associate the link belt name with cranes, but as you just saw, very much in the excavator business. I'm hoping to swing by their stand while I'm over in ConExpo in Las Vegas. I'm going to apologise very quickly. A comment came through and I didn't see it, and I think it's actually worth stopping the show for. I'm hoping Mick Norton is still here because I think this one will require his expert opinion. This one's from Peter McKenna. I'm being singled out on HS2 for having a disability. They want a risk assessment for me before I can start work. Does anyone think this is acceptable? Very quickly, gut response is no, I don't believe that's acceptable. And I would also question whether that is actually illegal on the grounds of discrimination. Now, I do realise that HS2 have set the bar very, very high in terms of competence and training and safety. I understand that. I don't know, and I don't need to know, Peter, what disability you're talking about here. I understand the need to make sure that you and those around you are safe. I fully appreciate that. But to be singled out, that is pretty much what constitutes what's the word I'm looking for? Prejudice, discrimination. One of those. Take your pick. If anybody else has got anything to say, including Mick Norton, who will know about these things, I'd love to hear from you. We've got some more comments coming in. No, we'll come back to all of those, actually. Actually, I'm going to throw this one up very quickly. I drove a link belt at ConExpo. I think it was a case copy. I think you could well be right, actually. Because I don't see them very often, I kind of lose track. But yes, I'll be checking it out when I'm over there. Back to the show, and then we'll get back to all things grandfather rights and disability and discrimination. We're going to round out today's show by going trucking twice. We're going to start with a look at a big machine from one of the finest exponents of mining trucks in the world, Komatsu. I think it goes without saying, but that is one awesome truck. We'll be sticking with trucks right after this, but I just want to very quickly pop on over to the chat. We were talking about Link Belt and Nick Drew. Good morning, Mr. Drew. They are Sumitomo, just like the case in UK, all made in the same factory in Japan. Thank you very much indeed for that. And while we're here, I'm going to throw this one up because I just think it needs saying. No one ever fails the CITB test, like most tests these days. And just to clarify, Peter McKenna says, I was born with no foot, so false legs since I was young. I don't actually see why that would require you to be singled out. I think we've mentioned in the past, there are systems now that allow people without the use of legs at all to get in and out of the cabs of things like backhoe loaders. I know Case have pioneered a system for that, and I've seen some others over the years as well. I think Volvo did one as well. And I understand that, if there is an emergency, getting somebody out of a cab, if they can't use their legs at all. But my guess, Peter, is that you get around absolutely fine and dandy, and probably have done since you learned to walk. I can't see why you would be singled out in that way. As I say, but need a bit more discussion on that. If anybody knows the actual answer on that, I know I'm speaking purely on gut feel that it seems completely unfair, but yeah. Expert opinion, please.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
I'm just going to pop back. It takes me I'm knocking on a bit. It takes a while for my brain to whir into action. Think about the grandfather rights thing, and then think about the situation that Peter McKenna finds himself in. Why, at a time when we are facing a skill shortage, are we so hell-bent on making it difficult or even impossible for people to work? Am I missing something here? Our final clip of the day features a truck. It's not as big as the Komatsu truck that you just saw, but what it lacks in stature, it more than makes up in sheer determination. I think that's what is known in the trade as a bog trotter. Going to throw this one up very quickly. Jim Turner says that that's not something that should single you out. Plenty of folk out there that have two legs, can't move around easily, and they don't get looked into. Quite right too. And as I expected, Mick Norton says, there is no legal requirement to carry out a separate risk assessment for a disabled person. And Peter McKenna says he's been driving trucks for 27 years. So what marks... As I say, I realise that HS2 are setting the bar very high on pretty much every aspect of work. But whether that means you should be singled out, I'm not entirely sure, and I'm not convinced at all. Throw this one up. I thought exactly the same. The whole industry is struggling at the moment on getting people in construction. Then turn around and make it even harder to get in and force experienced lads out. A driver that's been operated for 20 or 30 plus years will know a lot more than any CITB trainer. Yes, 100%. Yes. Just to let you know, I've posted a link to Ollie Gunn's video, but I've also reached out to him online to see if I can get him on a video call that we'll be able to bring you. He's come back to me, but he's come back to me while I've been doing this. So I'll follow up with him afterwards. I'll keep you posted on that. But I do think it's well worth a chat. And as I say, I'm always conscious of the fact that I sit on the outskirts of the industry. I really would love to get the take from somebody from within. So hopefully we can make that one happen. Now this.
Sorry to interrupt the guy with the funny glasses, but if you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button as it helps our channel. Or better still, share this video with a friend or a colleague. Thank you. Right, back to Beardy.
Right, that pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. The more I think about it, the main part of the show is basically just a taster before we get to the real crux of the matter, but that's okay. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into the chat, see what you're all saying today. If you can't stick around for that, then please stay safe, look after yourself, your family, friends and colleagues. You can tell I've done that once or twice. Have a great day, and thanks for watching. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll see you on the other side of this for the Craic. Morning, gang. I'm just going to say a very quick goodbye to Mr. Hatcher, who is going back to work. He is busy. Good to hear. Long may it continue, Ken. Unless you don't want to be. But have a good day, my friend. Thank you very much indeed for being here. And go back to the very beginning of the chat. First off the mark, actually, was our unexpected star of the show, Peter McKenna. Morning, Peter. Thank you very much indeed for being here. And sorry I missed your comment first time around. They were coming in thick and fast at the time. Who was next in line? Gary Muirhead, beaten to the punch by Peter McKenna. But good morning, Gary. Thank you for being here as well. And Steve Williamson is here as well. Let's have a look. Lots and lots of people turning up. There we are. Dan Cullen. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all well. I am fit and well. I am now on vitamin D tablets, and you can just tell the difference, can't you? Look at the vim and vigour. I know, no difference whatsoever. Nick Drew is here as well. Morning, Nick. Thank you very much indeed for turning up, and thank you for your feedback on the Sumitomo link belt thing. I lose track with who makes what for whom, and I'm also not that interested, if I'm being completely honest. I used to get awfully excited about things like that. Just not really that bothered these days, but I'm very, very glad you are, because then I can use you as an expert opinion. Mark Whiting's here as well. Morning, Mark. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Appreciate your presence. This is the comment that I missed, and it is well worth replaying. I'm being singled out on EKFB, that's FR Kia, I can't remember what the FB bit is, HS2 for having a disability. They want a risk assessment for me before I can start work. Does anyone think this is acceptable? I don't think it's acceptable on the face of it. In fact, even beyond the face of it. As I say, I do believe that HS2 are setting the bar very high. And I'm also aware of the fact that not only are they checking cards, competence cards, as people arrive to start work, but they're actually putting them through their own assessments to make sure that not only is the card valid, but the skills that lurk behind that are valid. I understand that, but being singled out for having a disability, and for what sounds like and I mean this in the most positive possible way, Peter, not a major disability. I'm sure it has been absolutely awful going through life with one of your feet missing. But over the years, I'm pretty sure, I mean, I think you said you've been operating for 20 plus years. You've learned to adapt. You've learned to deal with your disability. It doesn't impinge upon your work. The very fact that you've been employed for the best part of 30 years proves that you have, and this all plays into the whole grandfather rights. You have proved that you can do what it says you can do. So why are you now having to prove it? In this instance, prove it for a completely different reason, but it does seem remarkably stupid to me. I'm the same, Mark. I've got an assessment coming up for the DVSA to keep my licence. Yeah, as I said, I mean, I mentioned my dad yesterday, and he was the best driver I've ever known. And I'm talking about a car driver here, and he was a chauffeur for many years. But he was driving up until he was 79 years old. And in absolute truth, his eyesight wasn't as good as it once was, to the point where I had actually started to have a discussion with him about giving up his licence voluntarily. But at no point was he checked. He passed his test probably when he was about 17, 18 years old, and held that licence for another 60 years. Nobody checked. So why are we having to replace cards? Why are we having to renew cards at 5-year intervals? All comes down to Reddy's, people. All comes down to Reddy's. Sorry, I'm late. I've been to get a hot dog. If you're going to be late, Ken, a hot dog is a perfectly good excuse for doing so. Murder a sausage roll myself now. Now you come to mention it. The question of the day, which I'm going to throw back up when I can find it. Where is the question of the day? It's here somewhere. The question of the day. The question of the day was: have you ever been offered a fake card? And Ken Hatcher says, no, I have not. Peter McKenna says, yes, I've been offered loads. Steve Williamson says, no, I've never been offered fake cards. It's a bit of a mixed bag there. As I say, I've been offered multiple cards for sale. on Instagram. I because of the nature of what I do, I think, and this applies to legitimate business as well as scammers. I think people see the name Demolition in my title and think he must run a demolition company. So I'll send him details of where I can employ staff, where I can get his business accounts done, where I can install his business telephone system, but also I'm going to try and flog him some fake ID cards. And as I say, I've had plenty, particularly over about the last 6 months, and they seem to have really come out of the woodwork. And you can expect even more of that as we go along. Jim Turner's with us as well. Good morning, Jim. Hope you enjoyed the music that I selected to accompany the Bell ADT. Been a bit rocky on that one. Just thought it seemed appropriate. Dan Cullen, question of the day. Yes, I have multiple cards offered for them to be able to advertise in my groups, which I refused point blank. Even offered money as well. Yeah, I can believe that. Peter McKenna says, morning Jim and Dan. Yes, good morning indeed. And Jim says, good morning back. Mad, probably going on all over the country. Guarantee it. Obviously, I think that was a BBC expose that was done, and it's probably 5 or 6 years old, I think. But that was done primarily, I think, for the London edition of the BBC News. But if it's going on in London, I'll lay money that it's going on in Birmingham, in Manchester, in Leeds, in Newcastle, in Edinburgh, in Glasgow, and so on down the line. Because why wouldn't you? And I think the issue with that BBC expose, obviously one of the guys that had been found guilty of actually being involved in that was a migrant himself, and some of the people that were filmed were migrant workers. My fear now is, and I think that's still a key target. Certainly when I've been offered these cards, some of the websites have actually been written in Romanian and that kind of thing, so I understand where they're targeting there. But I think if this situation with the grandfather rights and CSCS cards continues, if nobody makes a stand against it, I think there will be even more, and it will be British workers that will be called towards it. One of the things I didn't realise, and I think it plays to what Ollie Gunn says in his video about the need to, the fact that we've probably missed the boat in terms of taking a stand on this. I didn't realise just what the timescales were on this. He had an MVQ assessment a while back, and from start to finish it took about 6 months. So we're talking about something that comes into force in December 2024, which feels like an awful long way away at the moment, best part of 2 years away. But if it takes 6 months to actually get the assessment done, it's only 18 months away. If you haven't currently got the money and you decide, I'll put it back a bit, maybe you've only got a year left. And if you've only got a year left, can you necessarily get on? And I would imagine, as with all of these things, the last knockings, there will be a rush towards the MVQ assessment centres, and they will be chock-a-block and they won't be able to fulfil the cards. Based on that background, would you be at all surprised if somebody picked up the phone and spoke to one of the scammers, even if it was just to tide them over? I wouldn't. To be honest, I don't know why people would buy fake cards, fake cheap cards, always having that worry that someone will find out and put your job at risk. They will always get caught out. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Steve. I agree with that 100%. But how many people drive without an MOT on their car, or without having taxed their car, or without insurance on their car? There are people, for one reason or another, some do it because that's just the way they are, some do it because they literally can't afford it. There are always people that will take the shortcut, and as I said, if bearing in mind that the fact that we still find ourselves in the midst of a skill shortage, despite the fact that we're heading into recession, there is still a lot of demand out there for workers. If you show your card on one site today and somebody says, this is a dud, get off my site, chances are you could be in work the following afternoon. And Ken Hatcher sums up the whole situation. Nuts. Yes, it is. It is absolutely shocking. As Steve Williamson says, that's one of the worries. if you were around for our Predictions 2023 evening show a couple of weeks back, you will recall that I drummed up, I channeled Donald Rumsfeld. There are things that we know. There are things we know we don't know, and there are things that we don't know we don't know. This is an unknown. We don't actually know. Fake cards, there could be 5, there could be 5,000, there could be 50,000. We honestly don't know. And bearing in mind, as I say, the targeting of migrant workers, bearing in mind some of them will have arrived by less than legal means, the obvious answer to them is to speak to somebody that speaks their language, Romanian, Bulgarian, Polish, whatever it might be. Here's 200, 300, 500 pound. Give me my card. I'll take my chances. I note CITB achievement grant for management CSCS car has been raised from 600 to 1,500. How do you justify that? Which to me indicates a degree of panic in setting in at CSCS about their card fiasco. How do you justify an increase of that much? We had that a while back, certainly within the NDTG, the National Demolition Training Group, where they hiked the prices of certain cards. And I know for a fact that the course material had not changed. The card itself had not changed. It was just a hike in price because it was a hike in price. That was all it was. As Ken Hatcher says, yeah, there are probably thousands out there. And herein lies one of the big issues, which you obviously saw in the BBC show there. They're not actually fake cards if the guy issuing them is from the CITV. If you go through the process and somebody answers the questions for you or stands in front of the class and tells you which answer is correct, the card that you get on the face of it is legitimate. The way you came about it is completely fraudulent and illegal, but your card, the card itself, is 100% kosher. You will not be found out. Sorry, Mark, can you read my comment at the beginning of the chat? We got back to that, and my apologies for missing it the first time around, Peter. I drove a link belt at ConExpo. I think it was a case copy. A Sumitomo copy, as it turns out. To be honest, this has been coming for years. I've seen trainers giving answers on their phone or yapping to others while the guys on a dumper test and doing stuff they shouldn't or need more training. Then at the end of the test, it's right, okay, you've passed. And didn't even watch what he was doing, just shocking, and this has been going on for years. It's about time it got bloody sorted out. I totally agree. And as I say, I am becoming a bit obsessed with this grandfather rights thing. And I was thinking about assessments. Ollie Guns reckon that an assessment can take up to 6 months. Now, obviously, the assessor is not going to be stood by you 24/7 for 6 months. I fully appreciate that. So this is, in many ways, this is like my complaints in the past about the NFDC site audit scheme. You hand pick your best site, where everything is running smoothly and all your paperwork is up to speed, and then you invite the site accreditor to come along and check over your pristine, perfect site. And he goes away very happy and gives you a clean bill of health. Did that site always look like that? Probably not. Are all your sites run to that high standard? Probably not. So we're going to have an MVQ assessor sent out to watch somebody at work. And I mentioned this just last week. If I look in my rear view mirror and find there's a police car following me, I revert to how I drove when I learned to drive. Hands at 10 to 2, regularly checking the mirrors, watching my speed, mirror signal manoeuvre, the whole kit and caboodle. That's not how I normally drive. So if there is an NVQ assessor watching you at work, you are going to be operating or working in a very specific manner. So what did that guy just learn? That guy or girl just learned? All they've learned is while you're being watched, you can operate in a certain way. But who's to say that the MVQ assessor doesn't fold away his clipboard, leave the site, and then matey goes to be driving like a lunatic? Nothing whatsoever. Peter McKenna, I think it's abhorrent. I totally agree. And doesn't that tell you everything? No one ever fails a CITB test. Like most tests nowadays, well, if you've got the trainer actually answering the questions for you, little wonder, right? Let's have a look. Gone through all of that. I'm going to throw this one up again because I think it's worth stating. There is no legal requirement to carry out a separate risk assessment specific to a disabled person. I don't know where that leaves you, Peter. The problem again with all these things, I'm sure you can go back. I'm sure you can find something on Google that says you don't have to submit to a special risk assessment because of your disability. But can you actually go to your employer and say, I refuse? Because what happens then? They'll find some other reason to not have you on the site for very much longer. I think the exact same. Whole industry, herein lies the issue, right? Steve Williamson, I thought the exact same. Whole industry is struggling at the moment to get on getting people in construction, then turn around and make it even harder to get in and force experienced lads out. A driver that's been operating for 20 to 30 plus years will know a lot more than any CITB trainer. 100% they will. Yeah. Why in the midst of a skill shortage are we making it harder to get in, harder to stay in, and more expensive to do both? Why would we do that? As I said the other day, sometimes if a system is broken and it remains that way for a long time, it's because some people prefer it that way. Ken Hatcher has been and gone, but I'm going to throw that up anyway. Jim Turner, as I said before, change the system for the new starters. That way it'll filter in steadily without causing a skill shortage. Said it before, Jim Turner for Construction Minister. Although there is no specific risk assessment requirement for a disabled person, employers should ensure that their existing risk assessments cater for those with disabilities. So that kind of turns it on its head. It's not a case of you having to adapt to their risk assessment. Their risk assessment should be adapted to you, I guess. HS2 acting unfairly against a person with a disability. They need challenging. Mick Norton can sniff out a challenge, legal or otherwise, at 100 yards. Thanks, Mick. I really appreciate that. I think they need the risk assessment for your disability is just to make sure they're covered and have a record. If something happened to you, they would know the disability, have the correct equipment, they're aware of it if something happened. Would it be to cover themselves? I'm sure it is. I'm sure there is probably a tick box on an HS2 employment form locked in a back office somewhere that says we need to tick that box. I'm sure that's the case. Peter McKenna, sorry, having signal issues. Oh, do we not know what that's all about? Yeah, cars will come with barcodes on them and have to scan them in the machine to start it. Oh, we have smart cards already. Barcodes regardless, we have chips built into the cards now. So why the hell not? It gets a little bit harder when you unless you're operating a one-man, one-machine operation. But why the hell not? I spoke to an agency this morning, says Dan Cullen, about a skill shortage, and they said a number of companies won't accept a red card operator, to which I said they need to have a talk to the companies and get an incentive for them to get the young generation into this, do an assessment of level of productivity of individuals. Again, there is another obstacle to people coming into the business and staying in the business. And she replied, that's an idea worth trying out. And I think that's one of the reasons I am so frustrated. When I first got wind of this grandfather rights thing, stuck my head above the parapet, recorded a video, stuck it on LinkedIn and thought nothing more of it. And with every single answer that I've had, and I think it's been viewed about 5,500 times now, with every answer that I've come through, that's come through to it, I've thought of something else, like, and I will go back to this. I'm just going to say this very quickly. Aki over on YouTube. What's up, man? And not much up with me, my friend. Thank you for being here. And as it is your first time, I'm going to give you your welcome confetti. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Where in the world are you watching from? I'd love to hear from you. But yes, going back to the point about grandfather rights. And I realise, and I apologise in advance for what I'm about to say, because I do understand that what I'm about to say is an overgeneralisation. But by and large, when I tend to spend when I spend my time online, the biggest audience that I have is over on Instagram. Second biggest audience I have is over on Facebook, and there is largely an age demographic. My key age demographic on both is somewhere between 18 and 40. That biggest group is sort of 18 to 25, and then the second biggest is 26 to 40 or thereabouts. Those age demographics account for something like 70, 80, sometimes even 85% of my entire audience. And Aki is watching from Mauritius. Oh, I'd love to be in Mauritius right now. I'm very envious, but thank you for joining us. So, as I say, I realise this is a complete overgeneralisation, and I apologise for what I'm about to say. But if you're in your 50s or potentially your 60s, my guess is you're probably not spending a whole heap of time on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on TikTok, Twitter, or Instagram. With that being said, all that I've said about grandfather rights, all that Ollie Guns has said about grandfather rights, and all that everybody else has said about grandfather rights is going on without you. You're not part of that conversation. So my first question, I guess, is how will CSCS let people know that this is happening and who it's going to affect? And secondly, I wonder just how good a grip they have on this. When I've read the official documentation on this, there is a constant reference to an estimated 60,000 people that might be impacted by the loss of grandfather rights. But I've also seen reference to 74,000. Now, I'm not saying that one is right and one is wrong, but let's just say there's a bit of give either way. So let's be absolutely fair. Let's say there's 65,000, not 60,000, 65,000. Does that mean that the CSCS is unaware of that extra 5,000? And if so, what happens on the 30th or the end of December 2024 when their card is no longer valid? What happens then? And as I say, I've not actually seen a single answer to that. There may be letters going out. I don't know. I wouldn't receive one. But there may be letters going out, in which case I take back all that I've just said. But I'm going to come back to this very quickly. Peter McKenna, I filled in the form for the WhatsApp group. As soon as I'm off air, Peter, I will let you in and you can join the conversation. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. The other point, I think, with the easiest way, despite what Ollie Guns said about the fact that it's too late to take a stand, the easiest way to take a stand would be online. To form a Facebook group or a WhatsApp group or whatever it might be, to share information and to form a petition to say we're not having this, we're not going to sign up to this. But if a third, a half, or 3/4 of the people that you are trying to defend are not on social media because their age demographic just doesn't do that, you're farting against thunder, aren't you? All that being said, I am very concerned about it, and as I say, the more I think about it, we could be losing a lot of workers, which is bad, very bad, but we could also be losing some of the best mentors available to the industry. So not only will that have an effect at the very top end, the experienced end, the older end of the market, but it will have a huge impact on the younger market, people coming into the industry that might previously have been buddied up with somebody that's been there, done that and got the t-shirt. That person won't have the t-shirt any longer. They'll have thrown it away in disgust and gone to stack shelves in Sainsbury's. And we're as an industry, as it stands at the moment, we are standing idly by and allowing that to happen, which I find it remarkable. And it's interesting looking at Ollie Gunn's video. And honestly, I urge you to go and watch it. He said exactly the same that I said about the red diesel debacle. We all stood around and kind of, it had been delayed a couple of times, and I think we all stood around and thought, nah, the government will see sense, and they'll realise there's an energy crisis, and they'll realise that this will put a major spanner in the works of the very industry that was relied upon to lead the country out of the pandemic. It'll never happen. It happened, and we're all paying for it as a result. Exactly the same thing with the end of grandfather rights, and we're all standing around hoping against hope that it won't happen, knowing full well that it almost certainly will, unless we all stand up and actually take a stand. People, that is almost an hour. I'm going to love you and leave you. I'll be back here again for the final show of the week. No Saturday Social this week because I have duties to perform. So yes, we'll be back very, very soon. Just want to throw a couple of things out there. Mick Norton has written a superb letter. If you're on LinkedIn, go and have a look at LinkedIn. Mick Norton's written a superb letter which was published in Cranes and Axis about drugs and alcohol testing. I am planning to do something more on that. And on the subject of grandfather rights, as I say, I've got a call out with Ollie Guns. I'm hoping that he will agree to come on live, in which case we'll do that as an evening show, which will allow him to finish work before he comes on the show. We'll do it live so we can actually get some interaction with you guys, and we can really kick this idea around. I'm hoping that will be the case, but as I say, I've got to give him a call back in just a few moments. Until then, people, go look after yourself, your friends, your family, and your colleagues. I'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thank you ever so much for being here. To say a very special thank you to Aki, all the way from Mauritius. The global reach of the Breakfast Show, eh? Who'd have thought it? Have a good day, everyone. I'll see you very, very soon. All the best.